Hi, I'm Susannah Townsend, an athlete and sport advocate, and I'm conducting a series of interviews for Omnia Media with prominent figures in the world of sports to highlight their stories and contributions. Today's interview features Emma Wiggs MBE, a triple Paralympic gold medal winner and 12-time world champion paracanoeist. Thank you very much, Emma, for joining us today. We are going to dive into your incredible career and everything that you've achieved on and off the water and off a court as well. So would you like to start off by introducing yourself a little bit to the listeners?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Emma Wiggs. I am a three-time Paralympic champion and 12-time world champion. I always think that sounds a bit knobbish to start with that, but I also have got my brownie teas made badge. So I feel like that brings me back down to a real life level. Yeah, I'm a Paralympic athlete. Haven't always been disabled. I was disabled when I was 18, but yeah, have really kind of refound a new direction and a new life in Paralympic sport, and it has taken me to places I would never have dreamt were possible, and learned so much along the way. And still at the grand old age of 44, I'm always glad it's a podcast when I say that, because then people don't see how horrendous I look after years of being battered by the weather in Nottingham. But yeah, I'm still learning, and I think that's the greatest gift that anyone can ask for. So yeah, delighted to be with you.
So if you look back on your career and you've touched on it just now, but defining moments in your life and career, what have been the defining moments for you, I suppose, as an athlete and as a person, and how has it shaped you into who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably we can't ignore the kind of obvious one. So, at aged 18, I was an incredibly sporty teenager, and did all the sports that were going. I think every school report said if Emma concentrated on her studies as much as her sport, she could go far. But yeah, it was just really, really sporty. Hockey was my main sport. Went off to Australia on a gap year to work on a farm for kind of 6 months, and then travel for 6 months, and I guess do all the things that you can do when you're 18 on the other side of the world to your parents, before coming back and going to university, and had it all planned out. I think like a lot of youngsters, you've got a plan, and you think that's how it's going to be, and unfortunately about 6 weeks in, it didn't kind of go to plan, and contracted a virus, and that affected the function in my arms and my legs. So my life really changed kind of in a moment. And I think it gives you a choice in that moment. I think people, can respond to things in different ways. And I think I was very lucky that aged 18, I firmly believed that this wasn't going to be my life. So I think that kind of, in a way, ignorance and stubbornness probably got me through the difficult years initially, with that kind of blind hope that it was all gonna be all right. So my life did look very different, but I was really lucky to have incredible support around me, and still found my way eventually to get to university and do what I'd always planned on doing, which was be a teacher. And in the early 2000s, being a PE teacher in a wheelchair was not really the done thing. So really struggled to get a job, which really kind of shocked me. That kind of first experience of difference being a barrier to what people think you can do. So I'd worked really hard at university and got a really good degree, but couldn't get a job. So I think that was a real insight for me. But then did manage to get a job, and eventually, really, really kind of loved it, and in threw myself into a kind of life of teaching and being me in my new form. And then I found Paralympic sport, and again, in a moment, in a flash, your life changes again, and took me in a different direction, and ended up going to the London 2012 Paralympic Games, which would never have been on the horizon. I mean, I was a good hockey player, not like you, Susanna, but I was fairly decent, but I would never have
Could have
gone to an
been. You
Olympic.
could have been. I reckon you were
I
giving
would never
yourself
have gone
some
to
money.
I don't think I'd have gone to the Olympic Games with you guys, but yeah, just found myself at London 2012 as a sitting volleyball player, which was, just a complete revelation to find myself not only doing sport again, but doing sport at that sort of level and at a home Paralympic Games, was amazing.
And for those that sort of don't know Emma's journey, I mean, be good to hear how the opportunity even came up for you when you were at university, when you were at school to start getting into sports again, I can imagine after your disability. And I think if I think of, for me, accessible as an athlete, it will be I would go onto a hockey pitch and hit a hockey ball. And I'm just
Yeah.
interested to hear how that really came about. And we think of influential people in our lives, we think of accessibility, we think of all of these things. How did that come about for you?
Yeah, I think it's something that I think has changed. I think when we look back to 1998, which is when this was, when disability changes your life, even though I was really sporty, really, really sporty and really interested in Olympic sport and Paralympic sport, the Paralympic sport was not really that well covered in the media, in the press, in people's understanding. So for someone like me who was so sporty, like we talked about, literally did every club at school, was in every team at
We would have
school.
been Emma, we would have been best mates. I'm
I
sure.
know, I know we would have been. In fact, I think that's probably why we get on so well because we're
Yeah.
kind of like clones of each other. So to someone like me to then have a life-changing incident that means and I don't find Paralympic sport for 12 years is
Mm,
shocking, is so shocking. So when I eventually found it kind of in 2010, it was through a Paralympic talent identification day. So it was really because of London 2012, the British Paralympic Association were looking for people in the country that were disabled that may have had sporting talent and didn't know. And it just had never crossed my mind. And I feel really fortunate that I believe that that isn't the case now. I think if someone as sporty as me doesn't find it and doesn't believe they can do it, how would anyone else, who has a disability know that sport could be so powerfully good for them and such a powerful change in their lives. But I feel grateful that I think that has changed now off the back of London and then Rio and then Tokyo again. I've seen a real step change. But it is, yeah, surprising that for some of us, we have these own kind of self-limiting beliefs, that I was, a talented sporty person, but didn't believe I could still be with only two-thirds of me. So, and I think that's sometimes a lesson for all of us, whether it be disability or not. We can sometimes have these subconscious self-limiting beliefs that really hold us back. 12 years, Susannah, is 3 Paralympic cycles.
mm.
I could be sitting here having just finished my 8th games.
Wow.
So yeah,
Well, that,
it's
I
it's
suppose that
it's
takes
it's
that,
it's not a mis
no, that takes us a little bit to, if you look at the contrast then in so many years that have passed, if you look at the recent Olympics in Paris and we had a conversation about it and how incredible it was for you as athletes. And what do you see the biggest change having been since London to Paris? And actually, if you're looking at the future, if you're looking at LA, what's to come, how you see the Paralympics as being something that people genuinely want to go and watch, that is in the media, that where there's role models, where you've got people with names on their backs, where everything is talked about in terms of where it's completely equal to how the Olympics is as well, and the excitement that builds around the city. Was that the case in Paris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Paris did a phenomenal job, and I think we'll unpick that a bit. I think there's two probably big changes for me. One is in terms of people's interest in the Paralympic Games, which I think has monumentally different since London. I think before London there was a bit of coverage. I can remember as a teenager watching a half an hour highlights program on the BBC and thinking like, wow, this is great. Like, where's there only half an hour? To the coverage that Channel 4 now do and all of the stuff that goes with a Paralympic Games is an absolutely transformational difference. And I think London has to take some real credit for that, for showing the world what Paralympic sport is. And it is a group of people that have a difference, but that perform at the very top of the world, and that's ultimately what we are. We are athletes first, and people with disabilities, second. And I think the second biggest change for me is in the kind of social impact that we can have, that I can have, and that I'm privileged enough to have as a Paralympic athlete on society, and not only society in terms of people with disabilities, because that is a really important part. In the UK there's 20 million people with a
Mm.
disability, and I feel a real power and a real responsibility to help positively impact and change people's lives. Not necessarily make them all Paralympians. It's not about that. It's about showing them, that there are things that we can do. But the second level of that is on the rest of society, on the other millions and millions of people, to understand disability better, to understand how we should be making this world universally accessible. And I think the Paralympic Games is a great opportunity every 4 years to do that, and to give us a platform to try and talk about it, because it is still not universally accessible. It's so frustrating, some of the things that people with disabilities face in society. And I don't even think it's deliberately done sometimes. It's just not thought about. So the more that we can talk about that, the more that we can kind of be out there and be talking to people and engaging with people, the better.
And that, well, to also talk about you as an athlete in Paris, like you had everyone on your back, really. You were the one to beat. And I mean, I know personally for me, watching you was one of the most exciting parts of me for the games, and actually watching your journey going into it for a few reasons, knowing you personally, also knowing that, yeah, it's been a long old slog for you, but also people trying to beat you. How did that feel in Paris?
I think it's always an interesting one, because I've been lucky enough that we've been able to train and compete and keep moving forward, keep the boat going faster. If I want to steal a rower's phrase,
Yeah.
keep the boat going faster over so many years that the world are chasing. But I've never lined up expecting to win. So I think it's a really interesting thing. So I don't really feel the pressure of people chasing me, because I don't ever really expect to win. I just go in really clear and focused on what I've done, on what that has meant to get me to the start line. And I think that's where there's such clarity for me, and such relatability to other areas of life, whether it be business or other people's personal lives or their own goals and ambitions, in taking control of what you can control, focusing on that, finding a way and a path to work on it and tweak it and deliver it, to mean that in those moments, which for me is on a normally windy, wavy lake, on a start line of a 200 meters, I feel ready. I feel ready to deliver everything I've got. And this, the run into Paris was my most challenging. We found a pretty significant shoulder injury in March time, which we knew needed surgery, and we knew was going to instantly impact the training that we were able to do. So that, for me, for someone that takes real confidence from the work that I've done,
Mm.
was a real challenge. So I actually lined up in Paris knowing that I was probably only a 7 out of 10, because of the impact of the shoulder, because of what that had meant for my training. So I had to work even harder on knowing that actually a 7 out of 10 was a 7 out of 10, and
Yeah.
that's what I had, and therefore that had to be good enough for me, because that was all I had to give. Whereas I think in previous games, if I'd lined up like that, knowing I was a 7 out of 10, I'd have been thinking, oh my God, this is horrendous. Like I'm not the best I can be. What am I going to do? This is not going to go well. And I think the thing I learn every time, every year, I learn more about myself and learn more about the power of how we can unlock our potential. And that helped in that moment in Paris, knowing, do you know what? Whatever happens on that finish line is I'm okay with, because I know that I'm going to deliver all of this seven.
It's also, if you think about, like you've just mentioned, sort of in business or anything, and how if you go into an exam and you've revised, if you go into a meeting and you've really done your research on a client, if you've done every bit of training that you can possibly do and given your best, you naturally go in more confident. And from watching you, from seeing you train in the gym, from seeing all of your stories and chatting, it's clear to see that even as a role model, by you doing everything, by you not taking the days off, even when you're exhausted, when things are a bit hard, when you've had a setback, and if you think of inspiring role models and take it away from sport completely, you are certainly that. And I think that's, I mean, for me as a person, even when I know I've had tough days and I've seen you out, as you say, on a windy bit of water, I get out and
No,
go,
it's why I
my
look like this, Susanna. Literally, all weathers. This is what we deal with.
look, Emma, honestly, my 5 kilometers are now turning into about 6 minute kilometers. So enjoy it whilst you can.
Yeah, but you're still doing them. You're still doing them, and
Still
that's and
doing them.
that's the thing. The goalposts can change, but I just think there's such power in kind of learning more about ourselves. And this is what I say to businesses when I talk to them: is ask yourself in the morning what you've got to give, and then work out how you've done at the end of the day, given that number. If you miss that first step, and you do what I've spent years doing, which is going in and obsessively trying to always be better, always be 10 out of 10, always be 11 out of a 10, like it is really quite damaging. I think one of my biggest learnings is I've got this really strong perfectionist streak, ultimately really unhelpful. But there are some traits that we can that we can take from it to help us. So being really clear on what you can do with what you've got, which fluctuates massively, rather than going into the gym and expecting to lift more every week, going on the water expecting to be faster, going into a meeting and expecting to nail a contract or nail a sale or whatever it might be. Actually tweak it to be like, okay, so what have I got to give? How can I go about it? And the outcome will be the outcome at the end of the day. Doesn't mean you won't be disappointed. You know, if I hadn't won gold and silver at Paris, would I have been disappointed? Yeah, probably. But if I'd paddled well and given everything I'd got, that disappointment would have been momentary rather than long lasting. And it's again a really great example of kind of a link between elite sport and business and life, in that, you know, define your success. You know, I can remember after Tokyo, I won the gold on the middle day and I won the silver on the last day. My teammate got the gold, and every interview for that silver medal with the media afterwards started with, Emma, you must be disappointed.
Well,
And
actually, Emma, my favorite medal is my bronze medal from Tokyo.
yeah, and isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because actually I knew that success for me in that race was probably going to be a silver medal, because I knew my teammate was faster than me, and I knew that the best I could do would still probably not be faster than her.
Mm.
So by being really clear about that definition, I actually lined up freer than I've ever felt. I didn't feel nervous on that start line. It's a Paralympic Games. At a pandemic Paralympic Games where we'd
Yeah.
had all sorts of stress. I was genuinely relieved to be on the start line.
Mm.
I paddled better than I ever had paddled. I was closer to her than I'd been for a few months. And the first thing she said afterwards was, "Wow, you were close. You didn't go away." And that was all I could do. So I was chuffed for me. I was uber chuffed for her.
Mm.
And that's why the silver medal is as proud and as shiny as the gold when I'm lucky enough to talk to
Sure,
people
it's
and
a
show
bit dented now, Emma. I'm sure it's been a bit dented, being handed
they
around.
are. They are. There is a nice chip out of it
Exactly.
from a kid swinging it around. But yeah, it's just really important to kind of to have that moment to look at what you've got to give and then work out how you're going to give it. And you know, some days I don't give it, some days I protect it. And that's another trait for me that has become really important, like understanding the need to conserve that energy ball. And that's something else I can talk about with people when we get to interact, is that's a really powerful thing, to learn how to protect your energy and what are we choosing to spend it on. And if we're choosing, like I have in many of my years, to take chunks out of it with things that are unhelpful, like comparing myself to other people, or
Mm.
feeling that things are unfair, or that I can't do things, that's really quite unhelpful, and that's just eating away these chunks of energy. So it's so powerful to learn strategies to try and preserve that energy and prevent yourself doing that. And I don't get it right every day, but luckily I think to be still doing what I'm doing at my age, I must be getting it right
I
on more of the
mean,
day.
I'm very envious, very envious. If not all of us, no, not everyone is going to have aspirations to go to Paralympics or be an elite athlete. And for me, just being curious, I suppose. If I think if I want to go for a social run with my friends, I can go to park run. I can go and do something where I'm getting out, it's sociable, where there's a huge initiative to make people active. If you've got someone at home that is listening to you, is there anything accessible for inclusivity with getting involved in sport?
Yeah. I think, you know, there is stuff that's out there. There is a better provision. It's still not where it should be, but there has been a real step change in it. You know, there will be park runs that have accessible
Yeah.
options, that are on tarmac paths, that are on, you know, better facilities than some of the others. So there is information out there. There's, you know, a great partnership with Paralympics GB and Toyota,
Mm.
where people can kind of look at sports where, you know, they can go on a website and put their postcode in and it will tell them about accessible clubs. I think, you know, there is still more to do, but the biggest barrier, I think, is people not knowing how to make something accessible. And I think that the worry that someone has in trying to know how to make it accessible prevents them even taking that first step. And quite often the people with disabilities have got some of the answers.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I would really encourage people, if they want to go out and try an activity, to get in touch with whoever's organising it, the club or whoever it might be, and have a conversation around, this is what I think I need.
Mhm.
You're the expert in this activity or this sport. What do you think? How could we make this possible? And it does take extra legwork, which is
Mm.
useless when your legs don't work, but you know what I mean. Um, it does take extra effort, and it really shouldn't. But that's where we're at the minute. But
Yep.
it is better. I have seen change, and I think I would love to be able to help people not feel awkward about watching me fill my car up with petrol and not knowing what to say, how to offer to help, should they offer to help, or not knowing what to say in a supermarket if they can see that I can't reach something, or that kind of awkwardness of their children staring.
Hmm.
That's okay.
Yep.
It's okay if we have the conversation,
Hmm.
but it's what's not okay is when people say nothing or shy away or discourage their children, from staring. It By doing that, we're almost telling them that this is something that we shouldn't be
Yep.
looking at. This is something that we shouldn't be talking about. So there's real work to do in trying to educate people and help them, because until disability touches your life, why would you know
Yep.
how to deal with it? But I think at the end of the day, the important thing, the biggest message is we're still human. We're still human. So there is still that ability to be kind, to be compassionate, and to communicate. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing to remember. I love it when someone says, I can see you're managing. Is there anything I can do to
Mm.
help? And then that gives me the chance to say, yeah, do you know what? Actually, yeah, you could grab that. Or actually, do you know what? I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm managing, but thank you. And
That's
it's
what it
that.
is. It's the language behind it, and there's the
Yeah,
education behind the language as well. Instead of,
yeah,
and not to put words in your mouth at all, but even from some things in my own life, my own perspective, sometimes I would rather someone say something wrong in a sense, but at least we can have a conversation about it and say,
yeah, yeah,
actually, say
absolutely.
it this way, then yeah, then that's better, and that will suit me, and this is how you can learn from it. And I've had a situation from saying something wrong to someone in my own past, and actually the conversation we had from that was, do you really think that's sort of okay to say it that way? Maybe think about saying it that way. And I was like, you're 100% right. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of the time, if you think of situations that, well, I can say on behalf of me that I've been in, is that giving people feedback sometimes when it may have a negative connotation around it, people don't take it very well. And that's
yeah.
where the conversations are getting better. And that's where it does become a conversation, like you said, instead of just shying away from it.
Yeah, and I think that's again another thing that I'm just so grateful to have learned from elite sport. I've spent the last year and a bit working with a new coach, an amazing guy called Brendan Purcell, who's just the most incredible person, but also communicator that I've ever come across. And he's taught me so much about how we communicate, how we can listen to each other, how we can talk to each other, how we can disagree, but
Mm.
actually still work together and come to an outcome. And there's so many soft skills that I've learned in the last year that I know if I'd had those before, lots of interactions and lots of conversations would have been better and been different. So there is so much in how we communicate, and I think if I could take people's worry away about doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, I think the way that we as a society approach people with disabilities would be amazing. And I think in the closing ceremony of the Paralympic Games, Andrew Parsons, the head of the IPC, said, diversity and difference can divide us, but sport has just shown us that diversity and difference can unite us. And I think that's so
How
powerful.
fitting at the moment.
That, yeah, exactly. Because and that's the key, isn't it? Let's embrace diversity and difference
Mhm.
rather than see it as something that is a danger, or is something to be scared of, or to repel or be disgusted with.
And I think for
Um,
people to realize that everyone has bad days. Like you have bad days, I have bad days. Everyone has bad days, and in those situations, naturally, we are all less confident. All of these things that natural human beings present, and because of that, my biggest message, I mean, I've got a tattoo on my arm that literally says "Be kind," and
yeah,
and it reminds me, like, take away all the noise, everything else, just be a good human being,
yeah,
and
and that
mistakes
and
are
that
part of life.
includes to yourself, Susanna, as well, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Be kind to others, be kind to yourself, and often taking that breath, taking that moment, you realize that thought or the words that came out, or the way that the words came out isn't kind, and that is genuinely probably the seat of all the problems. So
No,
yeah,
exactly.
particularly at this point of the world,
The world,
let's
yeah.
just all be kind, shall we?
So to finish off, Emma, just thinking about, I mean, your career, what you have ahead of you, and I don't want to make it just about your sort of athletic career. What are your aspirations coming up? And I mean, I know LA is a long way away, but for me, it's aspirations as a person with
Yeah.
everything that you're looking to achieve and actually be.
Yeah, I think for me, I love what I do. I love canoeing. I love the opportunity and the incredible privilege to be able to be an athlete. I've just had shoulder surgery, so that has kind of put a bit of a spanner in the works, but I am going to work my way through that. I'm really hopeful to do some more work. I work alongside being an athlete as, keynote speaker, working on some kind of performance coaching and mentoring consulting type roles with corporate companies as well as individuals. So really keen to kind of develop that, just to try and share the learnings. It sounds like I'm kind of on a bit of a soapbox, but I'm so passionate that there is unbelievable things that I've learned about myself through sport that are just like these gems of information that I think can help anybody. So really keen to kind of continue to develop that and explore that.
And
And yeah, there's certainly
one of the things that I've learned from listening to you, Emma, is that not everyone has the ability to give, is that you're incredibly honest and you give a very real version of life. And I think sometimes athletes seem very unaccessible. They almost seem very superhuman. And yes,
yeah.
you have your superhuman powers up here, but you're also incredibly humble, incredibly, I hate using the word normal, but that is the reality of life. We're all normal human beings and we
Yeah.
all have the things that we go through in life. And I think one of your biggest strengths is that you're honest. What you see is what you get, and the real story, which everyone, me, can grasp onto. Little things that you say, we can all identify to, and that is
Yeah, and I hope that
incredible.
I hope that's the actual message, because I say this to people sometimes, there is absolutely nothing special about me, and I think often you're put on a pedestal if you win some shiny medals, but there isn't anything special, apart from that I can do an incredible wheelie in my wheelchair, not at the minute obviously because I've only got one working limb, but when I've got two again, I will wow you with my wheelie. But apart from that, there isn't actually anything that special. It's just that I've just had these amazing opportunities to learn stuff, and I just want to share that with people because it's so powerful. And you're right, my vehicle is sport, but then they're applicable to so many different aspects of our lives that I just feel it would be a real waste opportunity to not be able to share that. So I will hopefully be able to continue doing that, and also continue paddling as long as this shoulder fixes itself. I will be doing everything I can to make the boats go faster, and see if I can keep these youngsters
Just
that are
don't go
chasing
around
me.
in a circle now. Don't go around in a
Yeah,
circle.
that's all I would do. Just, and she's not going to win any races, but I should do my best. We've got an incredibly talented team at British Canoeing, and in the GB team, so it will be a tough race to make that selection for LA. But like every athlete, you set those goals, and I'll see what happens come selection in 2028, hopefully.
Well, I'm sure myself and everyone listening will certainly be rooting for you. But Emma, as always, you're an absolute pleasure, and I know that everyone that has certainly been listening will have taken a lot from what you've had to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
I'm Susannah Townsend. Thank you for listening. Please follow Omnia Media for more great interviews.